Hello and welcome to another video in the CAD portion of our FTC YouTube series created and hosted by Team Ultra 10539. In today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about how to create multiple objects in the same design and how to sort of interface them and how to create more complicated sketches. In the end of this video, we'll try to create a drivetrain that looks something like this, so that we can understand how to make sketches, something like this. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to create a new design by clicking the plus up here. And now we have a blank slate. So now what we want to do is we want to create a new sketch, again, on the ground, like last time. And in order to create our drivetrain, the first thing we probably want to do is, since FTC uses inches as the major unit that most things are measured in, we probably want to change the units of our document. Now, the way that we do this is by going up here to the document settings, that's in the top left corner. We click the little down arrow, the units section, click the thing that says change active units, change the unit type to inches. Now, if I press OK, notice that our coordinate plane has changed a little bit and the units are now in a different format. So if I want to create a drivetrain, I probably want to create a box that is 18 by 18. That is the limit of how big we can make our drivetrains at FTC. So I just click the rectangle tool, type in 18, and then 18 again, press enter. Now I have my 18 by 18 inch drivetrain outline, I guess. But obviously drivetrain is not just a block. So we need to be able to create wheel wells where our wheels are going to go, and we need to create a space in the middle where all of our mechanisms are going to go. So the first thing we want to do is we want to sort of hollow out the center of our drivetrain. So we can create a rectangle here, and we can sort of hollow out the center of our drivetrain such that there's enough space. Now you'll notice that I didn't actually center this properly, and it's much too close on this side and too far away on this side. So it's actually not, this is kind of not properly centered. Well, I could undo it and redo it properly, but there's also a much more efficient way of doing it where you can actually input the measurements exactly. So it doesn't actually matter too much where you initially draw things in your sketch, because you can always modify it later. So by clicking the sketch dimension tool up here, I can actually click on multiple edges. So for example, if I click the sketch dimension tool and I want to center this object in the middle of our square here, first thing I want to do is I want to know how big it is exactly. So I'm going to click sketch dimension, I'm going to click this edge, and I'm going to click here, and I can see that it's 11 inches wide. Well, I probably want it to be I would want it to actually just be 10 inches wide so that we could have an even number space on both sides. So I'm going to change this number to 10 here, and you'll notice that the box actually gets shorter. Now it's even more off-center, so that doesn't really help us either. So we can also create sketch dimensions to specify the distance between two edges. So if I click these two particular edges and then click here, now I can see that there's a dimension that specifies the distances between these two edges. Now, if I want it to be centered exactly in the middle, we have an 18-inch wide box, right? Minus 10 would give us the exact width of the remaining space that is not inside of that square. And then we divide it by 2 in order to make the space equal on both sides. So we know this has to be 4 inches here. So I type in 4 and press enter. And now the box is perfectly centered in the middle. Now, we don't know if it's centered in the lengthwise way either. So we can do the exact same process, find the distance, the length of the this particular side of the box, and then find the distance between this edge and the outside edge. And we can see that it is 1 inch, and on the other side, it must also be 1 inch then. Now, if I want to see the distance here, and I created a sketch dimension between these two edges, you'll notice that I'll get an error. And the reason I get an error here is because I would be specifying the distance on two sides, and it would over-constrain the sketch because I would be telling it it has to be 16 inches long, but it also has to be 1 inch away from the other side, and also a certain distance away from this particular side. And because there's no way for it to accommodate any change other than 1, it will only allow me to create a dimension that displays the distance, but won't allow me to change it. So if I click on any of these other dimensions, I can actually change them. But this one, you see how it has the parentheses? It will not let me change the distance here. This is because if I put anything other than 1, it will not work with the remainder of the sketch. So now that we have our basic structure of our drivetrain, we can extrude it and to make it a full shape. So we can press the E button on the keyboard or press the extrude tool, click on this outside ring, and we'll make it, let's say 1 inch thick. So now we can recenter our camera, and we can see that we now have a drivetrain-esque structure to some extent. Now, we need to be able to put our wheels in here as well. So we also need to cut holes in this thing for wheels. So we can create a new sketch on top of this drivetrain structure, again, like we did last time. And this time we can create more rectangles so that we can fit our wheels inside. Now, FTC wheels generally are about 1 to 2 inches thick, and they're usually about 4 inches in diameter. So we want our wheel wells to be slightly larger than the wheels such that they will fit very easily. So we want our wheel wells probably to be 3 inches wide, and we want our wheel wells to also be about 5 inches long such that the wheels will easily fit inside. Now, we know that the distance, we want this to be 3 by 5, but it's obviously not centered again. So we can, again, using our dimension tool, set the distances between each of the sides. And since we know that this entire length here is 4 inches, we remember that from our last sketch that we created, we can set this to 0.5 and be sure that it is centered exactly. Now, if we want to make sure that our wheel is also centered or is also in the right space, we first need to, in the right space up and down, we first need to create our second wheel space on the bottom. Do the exact same thing down here, 3 by 5, make the correct size thing, use our sketch dimensions again to center it horizontally, setting it to 0.5. And now we have our two wheel wells. Now, in order to make sure that they are actually in the right space vertically, we can make sure that we set the distance between the two to be exactly 6 inches, as that will leave 1 inch on both ends between the outside edge of our drivetrain and the beginning of the wheel well. Since 6 plus 5 plus 5, 16, we know that this has to be 1 inch and this also has to be 1 inch. Now we can do the exact same thing on the other side, just repeating the entire process, 3 by 5, and again, 3 by 5 here, then doing our sketch dimensions between here, here, making it 0.5, again here, setting it to 0.5, and then again setting the distance between the two squares to 6. Now we have our 4 wheel wells set up, and now we actually just need to cut them out. We can use our extrude tool again by pressing the E key on our keyboard, select all 4 by holding down Shift as click each one of them, and then you can simply drag the arrow down 1 inch or type in -1, and it will cut out the 4 holes for you. So now, in order to mount our wheels, if we want to mount wheels to our structure, we need to cut holes for our axles to pass through. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to create a sketch on the side of our drivetrain here. Now, I'm going to create holes in my drivetrain in order to be able to fit the axles through. Now, however, I don't know exactly where I'm going to place those holes just by looking at it from this direction. But I can remember that from the math I did earlier, exactly where the wheel wells are, and just do the addition and subtraction to find the right spot. So if I can just place a hole here somewhere, I'll make it 0.5 inches in diameter. Now I'll do that again over here, make it 0.5 inches. Now I can remember that the center of our wheel wells was exactly, our wheel wells were 5 inches wide, right? And our distance from the wall to the beginning of the wheel well was 1 inch. So all I need to do is 5 divided by 2, which is 2.5 plus 1. So we know that the center of these circles has to be exactly 3.5 inches from the edge of our drivetrain. So again, we can use our dimension tool, zoom in a little bit, select the center of the circle, select this edge over here, and set this to 3.5 inches directly. And we can do the same thing on the other side. 3.5, enter. Now, all I need to do if I want to cut these axle holes all the way through, since the Since the wheel wells on the other side are in exactly the same place, all I need to do is select both of them with the extrude tool and type in -18 in my box. And you'll notice that it has cut all the way through all 4 pieces of the structure of the drivetrain. Now, if I press OK, the computer will calculate, and now I have my drivetrain structure completed. Now, in order to create the wheels, we need to create another new design. So what we should do is we should save this design. So we should go here to File, press Save, name it something. I'll just name it Drivetrain. And then we can create another new design. Now we have another blank slate. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create the wheels that we're going to put in our drivetrain. So we're going to create a new sketch. And again, on the ground. And we're going to create a center diameter circle. And this time, remember, the units are in millimeters, so we need to change the units back to inches again by clicking the document settings and changing it to inches. Press OK. Now we can create another center diameter circle. Let's make it 4 inches in diameter, exactly as an FTC wheel usually is. And we also need to make a hole in the middle where our axle will pass through. So we can make another half an inch hole in the center. So 0.5, press the Enter key. And now we can extrude our wheel, make it 2 inches thick, so that it is approximately the right size for an FTC wheel. Now that we have our wheel design mostly completed, we need to save it again, and I will just name this wheel 2 because I already have a wheel, my save directory over here. And now we have our wheel and our drivetrain. Now we need to combine them somehow. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to go back to our drivetrain that we had earlier, and what we're going to do is we're going to find the wheel that we just created in our sidebar over here. So we have our wheel here, and what we can do is we can right-click our wheel, and we can press Insert into Current Design, which is the second option from the top. And now suddenly our wheel is in our design. And we have this kind of handy tool here that lets us move it around in both the X and the Y direction. Now, this is not all that useful as of right now because it's really hard to position things exactly using just these little arrows. So I'm just going to place it off to the side over here and press OK. Now, in order to make it fit perfectly into this hole, all I need to do is I need to use a specific tool called the joint tool, which basically allows the wheel to be mounted, in theory, to the hole where it should be. So the way I do this is by clicking in the assemble section, I click the thing that says joint, and I click the little hole in the center of our circle. So in the center of our wheel, we have this hole. And you notice how when I click this joint tool, this little centerpiece pops up that indicates that I've selected the center of the circle. Now I can select the center of the circle over here as well. And now I can make a joint between these two. Now you notice that the wheel is kind of in the middle of our actual structure, which we don't really want. So we're going to click this little flip thing so that the joint will be on the other side of the wheel rather than the other way around. And now we'll notice that if we look at it from the top down, it's much too close to this side. Obviously, a wheel could not be touching the edge of its wheel well. So we want to make sure that we move it over a little bit. So we can set the offset to be exactly ½ an inch. It'll be centered perfectly in the wheel well. Now all I have to do is press OK. The joint is completed. The wheel is perfectly centered inside of our wheel well. Now all I need to do is repeat this process for the other 4 wheels on our robot. So I can just press Insert into Current Design, press OK, press the joint tool, select the center of this circle here, select the center of this circle over here. This time I don't need to click the flip based on the way I did it. That will be something you'll have to do on a case-by-case basis. Change this to 0.5 and make sure that it's negative so that it's in the correct position. Then press OK, and your wheel will be centered again. Now I'll just do this for the other 4 as well. And we can press OK again, press joint here, here, and again set it to -0.5. Press Enter, and finally for the last wheel, Insert into Current Design, press OK, press joint, click here, press here, and flip it this time because I did it incorrectly, and then move it over by -0.5. Now we can press Enter, and now we have completed our basic drivetrain. Obviously, this doesn't look anything like a real FTC drivetrain, but it it helps you understand the concept of how to assemble things in Fusion 360. In our next tutorial, we'll talk a little bit about how to actually assemble this using real models of FTC components, and how to assemble those into a robot that looks like something that you might actually build in real life. So thank you so much for watching. And if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at ultra@browning.edu or leave your question in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching.